This is going to be my module 4 reflection, and I'm going to be speaking about Through Deaf Eyes, which is basically just a documentary of about deaf people and all the trials and tribulations they've had to overcome and everything like that throughout the years. And so basically, the documentary starts off by talking about how deaf people are looked at as lesser of a person, and when really deaf people are just like regular people. Um, they only lack the ability to hear. And the documentary goes into how they're treated like if they're less than a they're not treated as equal. The one lady that was going to be interviewed for CNN, she's a deaf person, and right before going on air, the interviewer said, "My dog is deaf, just like you," and really didn't even have a point to that statement. And that's something that caught my eye because what are you trying to say? Like, what is that? Doesn't there was no point. Like, she didn't ask a question, a follow-up question. She was just, my dog is deaf just like you. And it just really didn't click or make any sense to me, but it stood out to me because it just showed how deaf people are treated in this world, and it's not very fair at all. The next thing that really stood out to me was the section where Mark Morales, uh, he gave a little presentation about Earth and ETH, or if you could call it Earth too, but the Earth with the EAR is the hearing world, and it represents everything hearing and all of that. But but for deaf people, they could either choose to live in Earth or ETH, and ETH is a visual world where there's an endless world of opportunities out there, and a lot of deaf people, when they're being when they're not allowed to bring together, like Alexander Graham Bell didn't like that deaf people, they didn't want them to marry together, or he wanted to try to eliminate death almost altogether, because saw it as almost as a bad thing. He saw it as a disability, as less than a person. They, how do I say this? Since he saw them as less than a person, almost as he didn't allow deaf people to he isolated them. That's what I'm looking for. He isolated them, and they didn't really get to and have a culture for themselves, and it did grow over time. But Alexander Graham Bell, I don't think he came at it from a bad perspective. He was really just trying to help the deaf, but at the same time, his perspective was almost or kind of messed up because he saw it as a disability. And when they had the signing schools and the deaf schools and the oral schools, instead of using them together to to get the deaf people to where they wanted to be, they almost started a war between themselves about which one is better and this and that. And that's where I don't think Alexander Graham Bell's opinion really should have mattered, because who is he to say what the deaf should and shouldn't be able to do? Because they if they want to be able to learn to speak, they should have the opportunity to do that, just like he wanted. But they should not be forced to, because that's that's something that's so difficult that no one would be able to understand except for the deaf, because we are born hearing and with the ability to hear and communicate like that, and deaf people are not. They have to learn that. You're asking them to learn that, and being forced to learn that, that's just unfair, flat out. And I don't think that was right from his opinion to be forced upon everyone else. But let me see. We have people like George Vedich that fought for the deaf's rights and everything like that. And then another point, um, everything that the deaf people had to go to. Like, I don't think I never knew this, that there was a National Association for the Deaf, and it was they needed it by 1880. That's just flat out crazy. I've never heard of that, but that's a big deal that they were going through that much not they're being treated unfairly and weren't given their rights. They weren't allowed to work in the government and things like that, and it goes this documentary goes to show you all the trials and tribulations that they've gone through, and they truly have gone through a lot and deserve to be treated just like humans, because they are. There's nothing wrong with them. They just were born without the ability to hear, and it's really not fair. That's basically all I have to say. What did I want to say?